The first thing that they have to do is they have to come into their own lower nature first.
Yeah.
And that is very aggressive, and that's where they need to learn to be violent, because part of the violence they have to learn, they have to turn that inward and destroy the things that are inhibiting them so they can become something. And so the women are picking up this feral quality. But what I'm hoping to do is that the men don't get lost there and intoxicated.
From your perspective, you see the collective of initiated, or what are near initiated men, in whatever they're trying to project onto the world or into the psyche of their respective communities. This male initiation is needed on a wider level, being able to go beyond what they recognize as their dominant ego function to bring in more information that they can then utilize for their own respective worlds.
The birthing pains that the feminine is experiencing, will be experiencing for the next, we're going to need a generation.
Sure.
There's a certain generation. There's a generation of women who we've lost.
Yeah.
They'll have to be of some type of other order that they fashion themselves to support the next generations, because it won't be, they're not going to the promised land.
Yeah.
I hate to break the news, and I'm one of them. I'm not going to the promised land. This is just part of where we're at. If I'm using a Moses analogy, of course, you know that, but for the audience, the biggest hurdle before we actually start getting children raised correctly and women being able to feel safe with powerful men, and you know what I mean by powerful men, not narcissistic, misogynistic.
This is for the audience. This is for the audience. We know
for the audience. The first thing that they have to do is they have to come into their own lower nature first.
Yeah.
And that is very aggressive, and that's where they need to learn to be violent, because part of the violence they have to learn, they have to turn that inward and destroy the things that are inhibiting them so they can become something. And so the women are picking up this feral quality. But what I'm hoping to do is that the men don't get lost there and intoxicated with that, because there's a spiritual move that has to happen after that.
You're trying to develop their instinct. You want to heighten the developed instinct so that it is able then to be in a space of overarching provision.
From there, it's able to ascend. It's able to ascend. And then once you start that cycle from being spiritual, incarnating, come to a level of understanding of your genomic potential, which has animal and ferocity and violence in it too, and it's working on your behalf. It's not working against you or the women or the culture. Then you have to rise up in a spiritual sense, because your full DNA is actually spiritual. It's not just the animal. Once you go up there, then you have a powerful male that he can descend when he chooses to descend.
Yes.
And he can rise when he chooses to rise and descend. And that's what the feminine, in my opinion, wants. This elegance, this type of elegance.
Yes, and that's it's great, because you surmise that in the sense of what Nietzsche, the German philosopher, was trying to convey about having a will to power, and that men need to go through this initiation, as he wrote about in his book Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where they do individuate. So in psychology, we understand it as the individuation process. And then on top of that, they reach spiritual ascension. So they're in a perfect position to be multifaceted and encompassed, and then come into many different worlds and assume forms that need to be assumed when they need to be assumed, in order to keep the evolution of the species.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I also can talk about that in men rise in spirit.
Yes.
To be creative and to shed light in the 3D world, and to discriminate things and to distinguish, which means to make something lighter than the other lights. The feminine loves that, in my opinion. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
They just, when a man is creative and bright and his spirit is strong, he's magnetic to the feminine. But they also are secretly waiting for him, what I call soulfulness. They're waiting for him to learn how to fall in his soul into the depth of things.
Yes.
But if a man stays there, then the woman becomes contemptuous of him.
Absolutely.
He's got to give her about 5 minutes of that, and then he needs to get back up into spirit. And then that this is just the way it works.
And on a more simpler level, that was some of the instinctual, stronger instinctual consciousness in our ancestors that allowed them to be these kind of men that were able to provide, safeguard, maintain, and evolve all the same.
Yeah, this is it's simple. I think what we're talking about is simple. There's just things in the way. I have a distinct calling similar to, I was orphaned and things like that. And I know I've had my burning bush experiences and things, and I know that I'm more in the line of warrior prophets.
Yeah.
And I could say that unfortunately, because I don't think anyone raises their hand and wants to be one of those dudes. That's not a good life. Sometimes it requires plagues. Sometimes it requires certain things to stop the powers that are inhibiting our free movement. And sometimes it takes an angel of death with a sword.
Yeah.
And hopefully it doesn't come to that.
There's nothing new under the sun. And if we've actually made an effort to study the lives of these prophets or these game changers, revolutionaries, pioneers, we can observe and witness that they went through their own persecution and crucifixion process, quote unquote, with the masses. This is no easy feat, even when you're dealing with it on an internal level, because it means a constant self-purification.
It's tough. It's tough, and I think we're all called to it.
Sure.
Just because some of us it looks more 3D, doesn't mean like when I talk about being adopted or whatever. A lot of times people will go, well, I'm not an orphan, so I don't understand. Look, just because my orphan is 3D, it's only there to support the archetype that everyone has a part of them that has been orphaned.
Yes.
It's same thing with being honorable and true to a higher calling like Moses. I'm not saying I'm Moses. I'm saying we're all called to a higher calling.
Yes. And that's what I fundamentally believe the message of Jesus was all about.
Oh, yeah. We missed that boat.
Yeah.
We missed that boat.
Exactly. Yeah. But so, and it's by doing so, and I just want to bring back, on a final note, the point you made about women when their libidinal energy is basically activated in the presence of that kind of man. They know it because it's also stored in their own epigenetic codes that their female ancestors would have had that at one point. Okay, so the understanding's there on an innate level, but it just seems there's not enough of these men activating and going through the process of initiation.
I hate to say this, but not only is there not enough, if men aren't initiating, if there aren't men that know this and they're not initiating men, then there aren't any.
Yeah. I know.
Now, yes, men can be initiated by the divine. Absolutely. It's still a required initiation, and it's hard. And that's where you get all these beginning stages of alpha males. All these alpha males, they're going to come to themselves even more. Yes. It's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
But they're going to come. They will. But because there's no real men initiating them, the divine's doing it. It's crude. It's rude, and it's obnoxious. Okay, that's the fault of the men in the previous generations failing. It is. And their blood and their DNA in me is calling for me and asking for forgiveness and asking me, can I step up? And they are wanting me to do it.
Yeah, and on a spiritual level, this is what is referred to as the healing of the ancestral healing of the bloodline, bringing that the karmic aspects of this into an equilibrium of sorts, so that divine is able to orchestrate what needs to take place, what kind of justice needs to assume itself, or as I mentioned earlier, a divine rectification.